the first step to healing is really understand how the brain creates pain and why the brain creates pain. What I do with my patients, I explore the life events, the personality that create stress, or trauma or whatever, and how that is related to their pain. So we do like a trauma / life event / pain journey, and we figure out, how one thing led to another, even though that's not, you don't have to know what the cause for all of this is. You're going to work on everything and really just kind of understand the neuroscience on pain and why we have pain.
Welcome to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, the podcast for high achievers who want to stay sharp, focused, and full of energy despite their diagnosis. With your host, National Board Certified Functional Medicine Health Coach, Julie Michelson, where Julie helps you take your power back from autoimmunity. And now here's your host, Julie Michelson.
Welcome back to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast. I'm your host, Julie Michelson. Today I'm joined by Susanne Meier-Briggs. Susanne is the founder of BecomeYourOwnMedicine.co, and she is on a mission to liberate chronic pain sufferers so they can enjoy life fully again. Susanne herself suffered from nagging symptoms for many years, including IBS, migraines, herniated discs, and insomnia. Addressing mind-body syndrome was the solution she had been searching for. In today's episode, we're discussing the root cause of chronic pain and chronic symptoms and how using the mind-body approach may be the missing piece to your healing journey. Susanne, welcome to the podcast.
Pleasure to be here. Hi, Julie.
I am so excited for you to share a bit of your journey with listeners. I think your story is going to resonate with so many people because, well, I won't even say why. So tell us a little bit about yourself and why I feel like you would make such a contribution to the audience.
So, I'll focus on my pain story. I think I suffered for 3 decades of chronic symptoms and chronic pain. And this is, what we're going to delve into in this conversation. And, it's not that I was in bed for 3 decades, but I always had something going on. It started actually when I was a child. I had growing pains. Then my teenage years, I started to have horrible migraines, ocular migraines. And then, the back pain, the knee pain came in my 20s. I had neurological pains. I mean, the whole right side of my body was I didn't have the proper sensation. Nobody could figure out why. I had gastrointestinal issues, IBS. And then, for some of the stuff, I found a solution. Like, for example, IBS would get better with psyllium husk, but then the pain just showed up in another spot. And I never made the connection that the root cause for all these pains is essentially the same. So, as I got into my 30s, I worked for international development for a while, and I got into a situation in Sri Lanka where I was involved in an act of war. And as a result of that, I had PTSD. And so then my whole body was occupied with PTSD, with anxiety. I couldn't drive anymore. I mean, I didn't have like nightmares or anything like that or phobias after that, but I couldn't drive anymore because the incident happened when we were in the car. And it was like gunfire for an hour and a half, and quite a few people died, right? So after that, my system, as I said, was busy with processing PTSD, and funnily, I didn't have chronic pain anymore. I was busy with that. And I did some treatment for that. I was doing somatic experiencing. I was doing EMDR, which is essentially processing the trauma somatically, because trauma is a somatic issue, as I found out. So you literally have to filter it out of your body. You can't talk to trauma. So a lot of the CBT it didn't do anything for me. I'm
Gotcha.
just speaking for myself.
That's yeah.
It's really a somatic, it's an energy that gets trapped into your system that you essentially have to get rid of. And that's what, for me, somatic experiencing in EMDR was quite successful, but I still had some remnants of that, for years to come.
Sure.
But then, couple years after that, the chronic pain came back, I started to have, as I had this kind of under control, I started to have back pain. I mean, horrible back pain. I had, I went through phases where I could hardly walk. And then also the migraines kicked back in. And then before COVID, it was the year before COVID, I had herniated disc number 1, and I'm fit. I mean, I do yoga, I horseback ride, I go hiking, I have an active lifestyle. So I was like, why do I have a herniated disc? I didn't make any sense to me, but it wasn't all too bad. It was like L4, L5. So I was doing physical therapy and osteopathy. I think I've done so many treatments, it's hard to keep track of it. Just to add, all those years, I probably tried every supplement on the planet. I tried the homeopaths, I tried the orthomolecular medicine. I actually did lots of educations in those fields as well. I've tried pretty much everything, and some stuff worked, but most just temporarily.
Sure.
And so then this herniated disc, eventually got better, and I was in physical therapy for quite some time. And then before COVID, I was still in physical therapy. I got herniated disc number 2. So within a year, the second one. And this one was so bad. It was L1, L2. It was further up. And it was so painful. The ambulance had to come. I couldn't move anymore. And I had sciatica, and the doctor gave me a shot. None of it worked. I continued physical therapy. Then I was really asking myself, I had physical therapy all the way up to the second herniated disc. Like, what is this all doing?
What is going on? Yeah.
And so then something started to dawn on me. I started to have an intuition that the root cause for all of this stuff is really somewhere else. And then in one of these desperate doom scrolls on Google, I think I Googled other causes or other reasons for chronic pain. So then I found Dr. John Sarno, and he wrote a book, Healing Back Pain, and I think it was in the 70s, and he had 5,000 reviews, positive reviews on Amazon. And I was like, I never found this before. I mean, how can this be? So of course I ordered the book and I read it, and I knew this was my solution. I found myself on every page. And the root cause for all of this is not physical. And in fact, the root cause for a lot of chronic pain and symptoms is not physical, but is emotional, namely emotional suppression due to stress, trauma. And it doesn't have to be a trauma like I have. It can be a little T trauma added up, and just basically life, stress from a lot of life events. And the thing is, we just bottle the stuff up.
Yes.
So, and so then I started to devour all the podcasts I could find on the topic. I read all the books. I'm kind of extreme. Like when I find something,
go hard.
I go hard. I go to the core. And So yeah, I found out what I have to do, and there's a couple different opinions, but you find out what you have to do, and I did it without consulting a therapist, but um and within 3 months, I mean, it took 3 months, and after 3 months, I woke up one morning, and I mean, it really took me 10 minutes in the morning to be able to get out of bed until the blood started flowing in my spine. It was so painful. I mean, crawling out of bed was the worst,
Uh,
and so like this was really the situation for 3 months. And after 3 months, one day, from one day to the next, I woke up one morning and I literally had 80% less pain. I
wow.
still, felt the muscles because I was walking like a croissant for
Sure.
for like 3 months. And but yeah, the pain was literally 80% gone. And I was like, okay, fine, yeah, it's probably gonna come back. So it took me about 3 weeks to believe it, but it never came back.
Which
So
is amazing.
it's really, it was, to me it was a miracle. I
Right.
didn't believe it, but I deep down I felt that this approach is is right for me, and maybe
Yeah.
for many other people as well. And what I did in those 3 months is really empty my reservoir of suppressed emotions.
Yeah.
And you know unfortunately, we're not taught any of that. Physical pain is always treated. If you go to a Western medical practitioner, it's always a physical problem.
Sure.
And unfortunately, psychology and physiology is largely separated in our system, where here
Wait, we're
we
integrated humans? What?
yes.
We don't have like separate boxes.
So we really are the mind body. We are one.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you can see this in everyday life. I mean, if you
Sure.
are afraid to have a presentation, you instantly have a physical reaction.
Sure.
You might get an upset stomach, or you might blush if you're embarrassed. Those are
Yeah.
physical reactions to an emotional problem. And chronic pain or chronic symptoms is just a level up. A lot
Right.
more suppressed emotions, a lot more, stuff in the reservoir.
Yes.
From life events, from
Yeah.
personalities that cause stress. And then when that reservoir is full and overflowing, and mine probably was already in my childhood,
Right.
then the brain decides to inflict pain. And it's always the brain who decides. The brain decides to do the best for you. And you might
Right.
agree or disagree with it, but it's trying to protect you. And if the brain feels threatened by an emotional turmoil, by emotional overload, it will turn on the danger signal. There isn't
Sure.
really a pain signal, there is a danger signal. And interestingly, according to neuroscience, an emotional injury, which is the stuff in the reservoir,
Right.
an emotional injury can triggers the same brain part as a physical injury and can create a danger signal. And what the brain then does, it decides, okay, I will give you physical pain because it's easier for you to deal with physical pain
Right.
than what's in this reservoir.
Yeah.
It sounds strange, but that's how the brain works. So the brain decides the reservoir is a bigger threat than physical
Yeah.
pain. So then you get pain in a weak body part. Like for me, my back is
Right.
probably one of the weakest body parts, and I can kind of explain that too. Strangely, it selects an area that you can easily explain. And
Sure.
so
I
then,
I
so
want to highlight a couple things for listeners, because there's I'm sure so much of your story resonates in one way or another with people, but there's a few things that I hear all the time, um, that you, through frustration, curiosity, endurance, whatever, got to this point where you were like, why? Because often, when I especially with back pain, you hear this a lot. Oh, well, they did an MRI and I have this, that, and this. So no wonder I'm in so much pain. And it's like, well, but so one of the really important things to understand is if you take, if you study, and they have done studies, where they'll scan 100 people, some with back pain, some without. And some of the people that are pain-free have the most concerning looking studies ever. And so, because we've been taught, right? Like, here's your symptom, let's find it, there it is. Oh, look, you have a herniated disc. No wonder you're in pain. Like that,
Yeah,
right? Isn't that what they probably
that's
told you at first? Um,
absolutely.
and
But
and so not everybody, a lot of people have herniated discs, don't even know it and don't have back pain. And so that's what we're digging into here. And the other thing I want to highlight too, because if misunderstood, nobody's saying it's in your head in the sense of that your symptom, what you're experiencing isn't real. Right? You're not saying, when we say, it's caused by the brain, you're not saying like, oh, think yourself pain-free. You're saying, hey, you got stuff you got to deal with. I like your analogy of the reservoir. We all have one. And this really applies to things like fibromyalgia. I mean, all kinds of chronic pain, and directly to autoimmunity in general. One of the really big across the board correlations with people with various kinds of autoimmune conditions is stuffing feelings and trauma, unresolved trauma. So just in case anybody's listening and this is the first time they've heard a conversation like this, nobody's saying anything's your fault. And I don't care what the films show. I will say, I was kind of cringing when you talked about the second herniated disc, because I fractured L1. I'm a fellow equestrian, and fractured L1 about 7 years ago. And that was painful. But you know what? That was at the height. No, maybe it was longer. Wow. Okay. Time's flying. It was probably 10, 12 years ago. At the kind of height of my autoimmune journey, where I was on, they were trying to give me pain pills. I'm like, I already have them. I was on every medication you could think of already. And I healed faster than anybody thought was possible for a woman in her 40s who had rheumatoid arthritis, because I didn't listen to them about that. So I just wanted to like really highlight, nobody's saying your pain's not real. Just because the brain was involved in creating it doesn't mean it's, imaginary. It's real. But also doesn't mean you have to carry it with you forever. That's the whole point of the conversation.
there's a lot there, what you just said. It's a really rich topic. And what you were describing about yourself, yes, you had an injury. Yes. And
Yeah.
hello, fellow equestrian.
Yeah.
Yes, lots of injuries there too from horseback riding. But that's an injury, right? And tissue damage heals between 8 to 12 weeks.
Yeah.
The problem is a lot of people don't heal because you
Right.
put a lot of fear into it, you put frustration into it, you put resentment into your pain. And what happens then is your pain highway, your neurocircuits in your brain, the pain neurocircuits is getting bigger and bigger.
Yes.
Wherever you're focusing on, attention goes where energy flows, where
Energy
attention
flows
goes,
where
right?
attention goes. Yes, ma'am.
So if
Yeah.
you focus on that and preoccupy with your pain, it's going to get worse. And that's why
Yeah.
a lot of people after an injury get into the chronic pain spiral. And then
Right.
you have, the fear creates more pain, and more pain creates more fear. So you have
Right.
that fear loop that you need to get out of. Another thing that you mentioned is, yes, you often, I mean, I had an MRI, and
Right.
my MRI explained, yes, I had, you could see the disc pressing on the nerve, but
Right.
did it really explain the entire pain I had? No, it didn't, because if it was, it should have been, the sciatica should have been in the back of my leg and not in the front of my leg. So
Sure.
So there's a lot of stuff that you cannot explain. And as you said, they have done studies. The Japanese have done studies. In the US, there's been quite a few studies. taking MRIs of people without pain and people with pain, and they found, basically every over 50-year-old or over 40-year-old, I think it was 60% over 50-year-olds have bulging discs.
Sure.
And I think it was 40% over 40-year-olds. And that doesn't explain pain.
Right.
What explains, if you don't have a dysregulated nervous system, which is the reservoir, the full reservoir
Right.
is really a dysregulated nervous system, then you don't have pain, because otherwise every 80-year-old would scream in pain all day long because they all have bulging discs and desiccated
Right.
discs. So, but they're
Right.
not. And this is the thing. No, this pain is not psychosomatic, right?
Right.
Psychosomatic is kind of a stigma to
We try
it.
not to use that word anymore.
Exactly. Even
Yeah.
though the word explains exactly what this pain is, but we can't use
Yeah.
it. But
We've
it's
attached this, kind
yeah,
of made up connotation, which isn't really what the word means.
exactly. So we
Yeah.
call it psychophysiological pain. We call it
Yes.
the mind-body syndrome, tension myoneural syndrome. Dr. Sarno called it the tension myoneural syndrome.
Or
And
TMS. Yep.
TMS, exactly. And, he, back in the 70s, explained what happens physiologically. The brain, the nervous system, the dysregulated nervous system causes nerve fibers to get deranged. And locally, he could see a deprivation of oxygen, which
Yes.
which can cause some of the worst pains you can have. And
Yes.
often with TMS, you don't have a diagnostic, an MRI that can prove it. Often it is like that,
Right.
but in my case, and in a lot of people's cases, you do have a diagnosis, and you have an MRI or an X-ray to explain it. And then it's harder to believe
Right.
that the pain is essentially caused by emotions and not physical. I struggled with this for weeks or months.
Sure.
And
I'm sure there are a good amount of listeners right now going, wait, what?
Not me,
Um,
not me.
but this is literally why we're here having the conversation, right?
Yes.
I was told when I was diagnosed with my first autoimmune diagnosis, can't heal. You're going to have this for the rest of your life. You're going to decline, period. Like you will decline. And so it's the same thing. And that is why I wanted to highlight that even if you have something that shows up on an MRI or any kind of study, even if you have, a for sure autoimmune diagnosis, like, no, you're not stuck. Even if there's an explanation, it doesn't mean that's the end of the story.
Absolutely.
That's why I wanted you to come talk to us today.
The thing is, people always think I'm the exception. My pain is physical. It cannot be that this is emotional. And the thing is, the way our system underestimates the power of emotion is appalling. But we are not thinking beings that feel every once in a while. We're
Right.
feeling beings who think every once in a while. You will never forget how somebody made you feel.
Right. You can't heal, like the feeling is where you need to be for healing. Like you can't heal from your head. I don't care what you're trying to heal from.
Yeah.
You can't intellectualize yourself out of something chronic into wellness. And every autoimmune healing journey I have witnessed and been a part of, which is, I feel so blessed, that's the first and most essential step, is reconnecting with those emotions. Because and I just want to say, like you mentioned earlier about the protective mechanism, like this is all, your body's not doing anything to you. Your brain's not doing something to you. It's trying to do something for you that might have served you in a moment. And like you said, then you get stuck in the loop. Pain is protective. Think of not chronic pain, right? There's a reason if you put your hand on a hot stove, it hurts. It's protective. So you take your hand off the darn stove, right? So I think if we can reframe that as a step one for people that are like still, whoa, 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 wait a minute, Susanne,
You should
let
be
me,
a mind body practitioner.
you can't help people heal if you're not, we're not, I'm in the functional medicine world. We're not compartmentalized.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't just focus on a body system. And so I just wanted to kind of reiterate, because you said so much that's so important that I
Yes.
just want to make sure, especially for the listeners that are leaning back instead of leaning in, because they may not be ready to really digest what you're saying. Take a little, whatever that little piece is, to explore the possibilities. And honestly, if you're listening to this podcast, somewhere inside you, you already know you can heal. That's why you're here. So Susanne has amazing insight into this journey. It doesn't really matter what the pain is, I think, and it doesn't even have to be pain. Most chronic conditions come with some kind of pain anyway. And that psycho-emotional part is not downstream. It was under there to begin with, for sure.
Yeah.
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 And and I vouch to say, even if, and 80, well, let's say 80% of chronic pain and symptoms
Mhm.
is the mind-body syndrome. It is
Sure.
proven. There have been studies, and 90% of doctor visits are because of stress and
Right.
trauma and whatever, right? So that's a fact. And as you said, pain is a message from your body. Actually, we say body is a representation of your unconscious, and pain is the messenger. And so actually, instead of being frustrated or being angry or
Mhm.
fearful about the pain, accept the pain. I know this sounds really hard, but the pain is essentially your best friend. It's just going, hello, listen to
Right.
me. There's something going on,
Yeah, and if
and
you
it,
ignore it, it'll get louder. Or like that's what one of the things I loved so much about reading your journey is, you can do the thing and fix the part, right? But then pain would show back up in another way. And so either if it's, something chronic, it just gets worse, worse, worse if we ignore, and the message is, until your body is screaming, or like in your journey, it'll just keep reappearing. It'll go away for a little bit and pop up somewhere else until you really, and just to be clear, I'm not saying when I fractured my back, it didn't hurt. It hurt,
of
but it also
course,
healed really quickly. So I'm not, it's not that again, we should feel some pain,
yeah, 8 to
just
12
to protect
weeks,
us.
right?
Yeah,
It's
I don't even actually, I think it was even faster than that. Um, I don't, it's funny. I don't recall. It wasn't, I was blessed. I do the part of the vertebrae I fractured was the most painful, but also the easiest to heal. So I was really blessed in that
yeah.
sense. So I got my lesson. I want to back up though, because I believe the change in your journey. So maybe if somebody's not ready to really lean in, um, notice how Susanne got curious. I think curiosity, it comes even before buy-in, right? So why? I love, my kids are all adults now, but when they were little, I remember, the why, that was the question all the time, but why, but why, but why? And I tried my hardest not to shush that out of them. But you hit a point where you got curious, right? You were like, hey, wait a minute. I'm active, I'm fit, I do yoga, I take good care of my body. Why? It is a really good question that can serve us. So
Yeah.
if you're not ready to dig in, I please at least start to get curious about why might I,
And just
have,
to yeah, just to add, I mean, I was taking good care of my mind as well because I was
yeah,
meditating a lot. I was
yes,
doing mindfulness, and the thing is, Freud called this shadow work. I mean, you can
Yes.
think of what you want of Freud, but essentially what we need to do is purge the reservoir, let the water in the reservoir drain out so the brain doesn't feel the threat as much
Yes.
anymore, and the brain will eventually let go of the pain. And that's what I did over the course of 3 months to a year. I mean, I have to add to that. I mean, I did it for three. Of course, I continued. I still do it today.
Thank you. I was just going to ask, like, wait, are you
No, I'm
done?
not done. I mean, I
Okay.
don't. So I mean, and the thing is, this is where people say it's not hard to do, but it takes some dedication. And initially, I definitely did it daily, and I invested like 30 minutes. So I don't know if you want me to go into the solution.
Please. Well,
All
I know
right.
we're almost up at time, but
Exactly.
if
That's
you,
why.
I know, but I mean, I always, and yeah, at least if you can.
So, so what I learned is, like I said, I got to drain the reservoir. So, the first step to healing is really understand how the brain creates pain and why the brain creates pain. What I do with my patients, I explore the life events, the personality, that creates stress and or trauma or whatever, and how that is related to their pain. So we do like a trauma slash life event slash pain journey, and we figure out how one thing led to another, even though that's not, you don't have to know what the cause for all of this is. You're going to work on everything. But what's really important is initially to read a couple of books on it by Dr. John Sarno, and I really recommend Howard Schubiner as well. He wrote a book, it's called Unlearn Your Pain, and really just kind of understand the neuroscience on pain and why we have pain. And the second part is then, I mean, this is transform. This really, I call this transform your thinking about pain, because we're trained by the Western medical model that all pain is physical, and it's you have to really transform, and that's a process, and you can't just understand this in your head. You have to understand it in every cell and in your heart, because if you truly get this, how this works, you are your own medicine. And that's why, I call my business Become Your Own Medicine,
Which I
because you
love.
really are. Because now, I have let's say a pain personality, and there are certain personality traits that a lot of us women have that are more prone to chronic pain. And if you have such a personality, which can be the perfectionist, the unworthy,
Pretty
the
much
not good
everybody I work
enoughers,
with. Yeah.
the hypervigilant, the highly sensitive, the do-gooders, the overprotective, the self-critics, the high achievers, you name it. I mean, and a lot of women have these personality traits. And so, you know, if you have them, then it's kind of also a life sentence in a way to have chronic pain. So you have to
Can be.
continuously work on it. It can be, but it's like, you just have to accept it. And, now when I have pain, pain is a human condition. Sometimes, yes, I have stress, and then I wake up
Sure.
with pain because I do
Yeah.
somaticize pain. But then I ask myself, okay, what happened over the
Uh-huh.
past week? And
There's
then
that
sometimes you don't
curiosity
know.
again.
Exactly, exactly. And then you sometimes you don't know, because the emotional oppression is not conscious. It's
Right.
automatic and it's unconscious. So you sometimes you have to dig, but then you get there. And when you get there, again, you drain the emotions from the reservoir, and then it takes me maybe a couple of days and the pain is gone. Where previously I would have suffered
Yeah.
for 12 weeks, 3 months,
Right.
running from specialist to specialist, and I no longer have this, because I am basically my own medicine as far as chronic symptoms are concerned.
Which is, and
And
I mean, that's by definition empowerment right there.
totally.
Yeah. Love
It's
it.
incredible. It's also, I want to take this maybe a step. You mentioned autoimmune disease. You can extend this as you want to extend it. When, we
Sure.
focus on chronic symptoms and chronic pain. But I mean, I've had cases with long COVID that healed with this approach.
Sure.
We've seen Lyme disease, like really, late stage Lyme disease
It's
cases
funny. That's what's been in my mind kind of the whole time, similar to, okay, yeah, you have a bulging disc. That doesn't answer why do I have pain? And it's funny that you said Lyme, because that's what's been in my head the whole time is you can people dealing with chronic Lyme, it's not the Lyme. So many of us have Lyme, at least here in the US, and it's like, well, why is it but why is the Lyme stuck? What are you stuck in? Why isn't your body kicking it out like it should? Because it is designed to heal. So it really is the same, whether, you see a film, you see a blood test, you see it, nobody's saying again, your experience isn't real. It's just that you don't have to be stuck in whether it's the pain, the fatigue, it doesn't matter to me if it's autoimmune, if it's Lyme, if
Yeah. So
it's still, we're designed to heal.
exactly. And you said, fatigue, chronic fatigue, insomnia. I had insomnia as well. I forgot to mention that. Sometimes I forget all the symptoms I had. But I had insomnia
Which
for
is
many
good. We don't
years.
want your attention stuck on those symptoms, right? We don't want energy
Yes.
going there.
But I had really horrible insomnia and tinnitus as well.
Ugh,
And all that's it's just another symptom of the
right.
same disease. The root cause is unfortunately, well, fortunately, um, in your nervous system, in your dysregulated nervous system. But
Right.
I wanna get to, so this is really the first thing, right? Understand chronic pain in the neuroscience behind it. I would say this is 80% of the solution. John Sarno always said like 10 to 20% of his patients healed by reading his book. If you truly
Amazing.
get it, you're there. I
Right.
still vouch to say that doing the work, and I'll get to what the work is, long term has more healing effects,
Sure.
protects you better than if you just get it. I mean, I don't want to say just get it. It's like I said, the most important part. But combining this with, I call this the release step. So first you transform your thinking, second, then you release. So you release the suppressed emotions in the reservoir. This you do by, first of all, by expressive writing. Expressive writing is not journaling at all. It's really letting the crap out of you. James Pennebaker in the 80s did a lot of studies with expressive writing. He wrote quite a few books on it. He's a lot of tests in his class where he separated the class into, I don't know, the meditating group, the expressive writers, and the journalers. And then they followed the different groups for a year, and they found out that the one group who wrote, he had them write about the worst trauma in their lives for 4 consecutive days for 20 minutes, right? And he followed all the different groups, and he found out that the group that did expressive writing had 75% less doctor visits than the other two.
And is
So
that is
really,
that your technique also? 4 days in a row, 20 minutes, or how do
no,
you?
it's every day.
Okay. Okay. Ongoing. Right. Okay.
It's
Okay.
until, well, nobody can tell you how long it takes to drain your reservoir.
Right.
In my
Well,
case, it
and we're
was,
always getting more inputs, right? I used to say like we're like onions too, like just it's layer by layer by layer.
yeah.
Which is not a very, I have there's a doctor who's done the podcast a couple times who specializes in trauma work, and um and I was like, oh, that's so much more elegant than an onion. She uses a spiral staircase analogy, but rarely in life are you done.
Yeah,
So
never.
yeah, I like yeah, sometimes I could see where you'll get a jump, right, from doing the work in the beginning and from understanding or from, you know, doing the expressive writing. You may notice a big shift, but we have to always continue on when we find the stuff that's working for us.
Yeah. So
I always say if I go back to living how I was living 20 years ago, I would have, I'm sure, fully expressed diagnosable rheumatoid arthritis again, right? Like you
I
can't,
would probably be in a wheelchair. Who
right.
knows?
Well, me
I don't
too.
know the next step for me. What would it have been?
It
A
wasn't
wheelchair.
good.
No, wasn't good.
Right.
Really
I love
sleepless,
that.
sleepless in a wheelchair.
Oh gosh, not good at
That's
all.
not good. That's not good.
So
But
transform
just
your thinking and then release is step
so,
two.
yes. So expressive writing, the way I go about this is you make a list, take a piece of paper, separate it in three columns. The first column, you make, keywords. The first column is 0 to 20, age 0 to 20. All the negative experience, the trauma, like I said, little t trauma, big T trauma, um, life events that could be, attachment, authenticity
Mhm.
disorders, ACEs, adverse childhood experience. But even if whatever stuck with you and wherever you have a little bit of emotion there that you feel like is not drained, you
Mhm.
you 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 make a you make a list with keywords, and then the second column is 20. I mean, it's daily life. It's 20 till today. So you
Okay.
list all the divorce, all the moves, financial strains, boss problems, a stressful mother, stressful husband, whatever. And don't have any holy
Don't be
cows.
polite.
Don't be polite. A lot of people, they don't put the elephant in the room on the list.
Sure.
It's the
Sure.
protected mother, the protected son, or whatever.
Yeah.
So put the elephant. It's only for you. Nobody else will see that. And then the third column is the personality traits that I mentioned,
Oh,
the unworthy, the not good enough, the hypervigilant. Here you have to really be very honest with yourself and describe how your personality traits causes stress in your life. If you are, Dr. Sarno always said the perfectionist is the number one chronic pain sufferer, because
sure.
if you're a perfectionist, it causes so much more work for you, so much more stress for you,
Mhm.
and so much more resentment and frustration and anger.
Sure.
And if you happen to be an introvert on top of it, all that stuff is bottled up. So, so you have to be really
I can
honest with
relate.
yourself, go within,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
make that list, put it out there. And then you have once, and that's a dynamic list, right?
Oh
Once
yeah.
you have it, then every day, you take a topic, whatever pops out at you, and it could be from any of the columns. You take that and you expressive write for like 20 minutes. And expressive writing is you really let the crap out of you. I feel, and I am pissed, and you use the profanity and whatever, right? You're
Sure.
raw, you put it on paper. And then you throw it away, you burn it, and you do this in a room. You make sure nobody else comes in, nobody can see
Sure.
you, because you're going to cry. You're going to cry, you're going to be pissed, but you're going to cry mostly. I cried more than ever before in my life in that 1 year when I did this. And the thing
I
is, what
imagine.
happened, I got a completely different relationship to crying. Now I
Sure.
cry, I
It's
cry all the
healing.
time, and it's no
Yeah.
big deal.
Yeah.
Before, I thought, if I cry, oh my God, I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. If I cry, what
Yeah.
else is coming out? How
Yeah.
bad is it going to be? So now it's you, it's your emotions. It's nothing threatening. It's
Yeah.
just that, and of course, there's people that were sexually abused or uh, whatever happened to them. And maybe there it makes sense to go to a professional if you feel like it's too much. There
Absolutely.
you see somebody for help. But I think most people, and most of the people, my patients I worked with, they were 100% able to do this themselves. You go little by little, right?
Sure.
Topic by
Sure.
topic.
Safely. And yeah, you want to heal but you want to also relearn what safety feels like crying.
Yeah, exactly. Crying is safe.
It is, it does,
It's interesting
but
that
that, I love that you said that, because that is often it's like, well, what do you think is going to happen if you just let go? Right?
nothing.
Like we always have a story, before we do the work. So you gave us this beautiful process. But listeners, and there's a lot, I would say, read the books that are recommended. And in a minute, we'll tell people where to find you. But listeners know they're trained, used to getting one action step. So, and it may not be like something from the process. But what is one thing listeners can do today, start doing to improve?
Well, one thing is go on Amazon and either buy Unlearn Your Pain by Dr. Howard Schubiner or Healing Back Pain, and ignore the back pain. It's all chronic pain and symptoms by Dr. John Sarno. That's really the first step. That's where you have to
I love
start.
it. I love
Yeah.
it. So amazing. And for people who are listening on the go and not going to check out the show notes, where's the best place to find more about you?
Becomeyourownmedicine.co.
Love it.
That's where to find me. And from there, you can link to my Facebook support group and my Instagram.
Amazing. Susanne, thank you so very much. You really, this episode is so jam-packed with goodness. I really, really appreciate your contribution to the audience.
Thank you. I really want to make a difference with chronic pain, and I want to help chronic pain sufferers because it's a pandemic. This is the real pandemic, right?
Yeah.
In fact,
absolutely.
it's costing it's 50 million people in the US that suffer from chronic pain. It's costing 500 billion each year in direct healthcare and disability costs. It is incredible.
Well, and it's costing happiness and connection and joy and so much more. I mean, the impact is so much more than financial.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
for everyone listening, remember, you can get those transcripts and show notes by visiting inspiredliving.show. I hope you had a great time and enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity. Did you enjoy this episode? Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to get a transcript of this and every other episode, just head on over to inspiredliving.show or click on the link in this episode's description. There, you can also find everything we discussed in this episode, including links and information about our guest. You can even send in your questions to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Until next time, this is Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, helping you take your power back.